Sure.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes, the webinar has started. Just to let you all know.
1 second.
Yeah.
Test sound.
Refrain
you are
versus
here?
को आता सब कुछ है ये
It's
पता नहीं
visible,
exam
it's
में क्या
visible. I think we've gone live also.
Yeah. Hi everyone.
Okay. Great. I think we're good to start. All right. Thank you so much for joining in. I see a lot more people are joining in, so we're just doing a quick tech check in the first 2 minutes. So before we sort of jump in, I just have a few instructions for the participants. So anybody wanting to post their comments or questions, put it in the chat box in the Q&A section. So we will pick it up from there, and also the panelists will be actively looking into the chat box for questions from you all. So my name is Roy, and I lead the Diversity and Inclusion at NASCOM Foundation. And we would like to welcome one and all today to our Diversity and Inclusion discussion series that we do on a monthly basis. We at NASCOM Foundation collaborate with businesses, groups, and government to promote inclusion for all. We are engaged in driving various industry-level skilling programs for diverse groups, sensitization workshops for leaders and organizations, policy advocacy, best practices, and hosting Global Inclusion Summit. And today we are very excited to collaborate with Changing on a workshop, which is Rethinking the Future of Workforce Innovation in Dyslexia. So Changing Foundation is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to change the debate around constructing inclusive societies by establishing cradle-to-career success routes for neurodiverse people. So today's conversation is going to be very interesting. This is specifically for organizations and individuals. Maybe, you all might have some idea about what dyslexia is, but I probably might not set a context here. I will leave it to the neurodiverse experts here. We have some really amazing set of speakers today who's going to be walking you through various detailed, in-depth view into what dyslexia is, experience sharing sessions, and also a sneak peek into the kind of assistive technology that is available for people with dyslexia. So before we sort of kickstart, I would like to introduce Nidhi Basin, who is the CEO at NASCOM Foundation. Nidhi comes with over 20 years of experience in the social development sector. She's fervently committed to ensuring that everyone has access to equal opportunities, using technology for social good, and advancing women and young people. She has been advancing the mission of NASCOM Foundation, which is to create an India that is truly inclusive through technology and collaboration with business, NGOs, new social entrepreneurs, and the government. So I'll probably hand it over to Nidhi to say a few words, and then we'll move into the workshop today. Over to you, Nidhi.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you so much. So excited to be here. I would like to just start by something that I hear on a regular basis from my daughter, who is dyslexic. She's forever questioning that, why does everyone always highlight the weaknesses rather than her strengths? And this is something which is very common, which I see in a lot of people with dyslexia. That they question that why are the weaker skills valued more highly than the strong ones. In our country, we have probably 10% of our population which is dyslexic. World over, I think there are more than 700 people who maybe, there's no exact data, but probably more than 700 people are dyslexic. And just because this challenge is not very obvious, it's not like any other form of disability. It's very difficult for people to comprehend it. It's very difficult for people to understand because it is not in your face. And that makes it so much difficult for people with dyslexia to adjust, especially in the workforce. Of course, in our country, it's very encouraging that a lot of schools are becoming very aware about it. You can see that schools are more aware, more inclusive. They have special facilities for children with dyslexia. And at the same time, even government is trying to train a lot of their teachers into it. So this, yes, of course, we have a long way to go, but this is encouraging. But the next problem is that while the schools may be very supportive, what happens when they come out and they want to be a part of the workforce, when they want employment? And that is where the biggest struggle right now is, that there are not enough policies to support and provide the adjustment. Because while people with dyslexia have their own strengths, what I said initially, sometimes the weaknesses are highlighted. Just because they may not be able to do a particular task, that's what gets highlighted. And with our role at NASCOM Foundation is to basically spread awareness about it, make people more sensitive, the employers more sensitive. And we are very focused on the benefits of a dyslexic way of thinking. In fact, in our last summit, we did talk about a lot about organizations using neurodiversity as a competitive advantage. And with this thing, now we are holding more awareness workshops like today, more sessions around it. And we really feel that if the industry understands that why people with neurodiversity, why people with dyslexia, why do we need to make certain kind of provisions for them to adjust in the workforce? How does it really help the workforce also? And the goal is of making talent process completely neurodiversity friendly. And while most of you may understand the word dyslexia or may have heard the word dyslexia, but of course it's many times misinterpreted and misunderstood. And the whole idea behind today's workshop is that with a partner like Changing and the other specialists out here, can we actually speak a little bit more about what is dyslexia and how can all of us come together and make them a more inclusive part of people with dyslexia, more inclusive part of the workforce. So I hope everybody really enjoys today's conversation. I'm really looking forward to it, and I still have a lot to learn out here. Over to you, Roy.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you so much for setting that context. I think the next conversation is going to be pretty intense. The next 20-25 minutes or so will be done by Nupur Junjunwala. So Nupur is the co-founder and trustee at Changing. Nupur advocates for creation of inclusive and equitable society as the parent of a teenager who's also dyslexic. She has a wealth of expertise in influencing national and international goals for digital inclusion, women's empowerment, financial inclusion, and disability rights. She has experience working in many countries with state governments, international organizations, and several Indian government ministries. So with that, I will welcome Nupur to take it away from here. So there's going to be next 25 minutes of intense talk about everything that we need to know about dyslexia, and then followed by experience sharing session. So over to you, Nupur.
Thank you so much, Roy, and thank you, Nidhi. I really want to commend NASCOM Foundation's commitment to creating inclusive work environments and working really towards inclusion. We really appreciate this partnership. As I load my screen, I just wanted to set some ground rules, maybe. This is an interactive session. Please raise your hand, show emotions, share in the chat as you feel relevant. We're here to answer questions, support things. The other is that for a lot of people in the past, we've seen this may actually release some emotions, or you may suddenly realize that you or somebody close to you may be at risk. So we're here in case you need to speak as well. So with that, I start with dyslexia at work, fostering a neurodiverse workforce. So really quickly, if you all can put on in the chat, who do you think within these 5 people is dyslexic? What would your guess be? You can, just put the number. So 1, 3, 5, there's somebody who said can't say. 1, wow, can't say again. Yeah. So for the sake of time, that's right. So I'm going to answer this in a little bit. but keep that in your mind, right? Like, which number did you think? So what is really a learning disability? Um, Neurodiversity is really the way people's brains function. It is not everybody is the same, just like we are different by genetic code, by gender, by race, by ability. The functioning of the brain is another way to be to be divergent, which is called neurodiversity. It includes conditions like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and dysphagia, autism, and attention deficit disorder. For those with specific learning disabilities, which is dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dysphagia, they have to be diagnosed with average or above average intelligence. These are lifelong conditions that run in families. And access to accommodations and assistive tech are key for them to succeed through life. It's just like wearing glasses. For those who can't see, if you wear your glasses, you see better and you see clearer. Same way, if you have accommodations, individuals with learning disabilities excel and thrive. It's an invisible disability, so you really can't tell. So if you go back to that image earlier, the right answer really was can't tell. It could be any of them. There are no physical demarcations for this set of disabilities. They're diagnosed through a psychometric test, which also includes an IQ test, and unemployment and underemployment are one of the key challenges that these individuals face. Globally, we estimate that it's 1 in 5 that are impacted by these disabilities. That means 20% of our population. So this disability was formally recognized for the first time in India in 2016. It mandates, as per the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, there is a mandate for equal opportunity in education and employment. The most recent new education policy in 2020 calls it out as well. We have similar mandates in the US, the UK, and other European nations where there are also reservations to ensure that people with dyslexia and other learning disabilities are hired. So how do they really manifest? Dyslexia impacts language. It's about 80% of all SLDs. If you see here, the text is all jumbled up, it's skipping, it's changing. This is generally how a dyslexic brain sees text. And this is one of the reasons why they struggle with it. So here I need a volunteer. Somebody can raise their hand really quickly to do a fun sort of exercise. Roy, can you just pick any one person? Okay, so we have.
I'm just trying one sec. Could somebody ping as a volunteer? Let me try to see if I
Preeti
can.
has raised her hand. I'm going to allow her to talk.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Preeti, go ahead. You have 60 seconds to read this text.
Okay, we P9 our tribe at the familiar place. A Dobby like yours and B. Some words are really not making sense. D contains unworth three lows.
Come on,
Self that
Preeti. If you are educated,
work
I'm sure you
together.
can do that.
Can't read because I don't know what does those words
Go
mean.
ahead. Try harder.
We Kesipu and within each O of these waste cells, each O that has DNA, the DNA copy is exactly the Zoc was,
Oh,
oh my god, barbecue resumes so the co. You're teaching me a new language.
how
Each
many times are
cell
you supposed to know?
is,
This is basic
the
English.
I forgot the English now after reading this book. Well,
Okay. So
okay,
I'm
I'll
going
stop.
to, why don't you? Okay, so with this, I'm going to stop and go ahead and read this. Go ahead and try and read this text.
We begin our trip at a familiar place, a body like yours and mine. It contains 100 trillion cells that work together by design, and within each one of these many cells, each one that has DNA, the DNA code is exactly the same, a mass-produced resume. So the code in each cell is identical, a remarkable but valid claim. This means that the cells are nearly alike but not exactly the same. Take, for instance, the cells of the intestine, that they are vital is certainly Plain, now think about the way you would think if those cells were the cells in your brain.
Thank you so much, Preeti. So can you believe it that this text and this text is actually identical? This is how a dyslexic mind actually looks at the text, while this is what is actually there. So what happens is, because it's also known as a print disability, they start inverting characters and things. So here the B has been, in this case, the B has become a P, the G has become a 9, in trip, the P has become a B, and so on and so forth. And suddenly, before you realize it, the text has all become jumbled and it makes no sense. And this is what an individual sees and struggles with. And suddenly you are constantly, we as individuals are judging them, saying, these are basics and they're not getting it, but this is what their brain is seeing. So that's English. Thank you so much for volunteering. I apologize for harassing you, but it was just to sort of showcase how we work with these individuals. Next comes dyscalculia. This impacts maths. This is not, the 99.99% of Indians who hate maths. This is actually 5% of the population that actually struggles with mathematical concepts. So for example, here 6 plus 5 has become 8. And it's primarily because they merged the two. 4 plus 5 equals 6. If you see the highlighted, it's actually a 9 that has become inverted into a 6. A 5 into 6 has become a 65 because the individual didn't understand the concept of multiplication and has put the two numbers together and flipped it. A 4 into 2 is 8 and the 4 is flipped. Here, I want to highlight that it's not just about the writing, but understanding the concept of maths. Distance, time, height, space, quantity is something that they often struggle with, even though they're very good at 3D thinking. And then this is dysgraphia impacts writing. This is again not a doctor who might have terrible handwriting, but these people have a challenge in the way their brain processes information. So they're not able to write, coordinate. So it's much slower. So here's a quick thing of a gentleman called Mr. Vivek Khare, who's dyslexic. He's an IIT Kanpur graduate, and he explains his journey.
The refrain was उसको आता सब कुछ है, ये पता नहीं एग्जाम में क्या करता है. Because when it came to spelling, my grammar was all over the place, and for whatever reasons, I'm not blaming the teachers. It maybe they themselves were clueless. The awareness about the dyslexia was not there, and therefore, when it came to the written exams, I was very poor. I was very good at maths. My science was good, but if everything had to be judged by the written words, then that used to fail me. And for me, then I never looked, but I was very good at maths. I gave my JEE twice. I cleared both the times. I wanted to do physics. I came and did physics. And again, the thing is that JEE again is a paper which does not judge you on your on your written skill. It's basically your logic and the maths. So there I've excelled. I was lucky enough to work for InfoEdge Group, which was a startup. And these places, I mean, the thing is, if you're good, it's pure meritocracy. So if you're good, you keep getting the opportunities.
So this is the magic of dyslexia, right? And then finally, we all think that this is just about struggling with language and academics, but it actually struggles with daily life. There is a challenge around the way their brain processes information. It's really, in tech language, the RAM is corrupted, right? So the everyday processing that we do becomes a challenge for these individuals. So that leads to poor self-esteem because people are judging them for being duffers, really, if I can be politically incorrect, because of their reading, writing capabilities. And this is really frustrating for them. Often there is a large gap between their oral and written information, performance. So this is that person in your, class or in your work environment who gives all this fantastic gyan, right? ऐसे कर सकते हैं, वैसे कर सकते हैं, and this is the strategy, and I think we should create this communication, whatever. And then suddenly you tell them, oh, can you document this? And that document has disappeared, right? Like suddenly we don't know where it is. Or it takes ages for them to turn around things. It's because of that. Then the other is the memory challenges, right? Because of the way the RAM functions, it's really that they don't understand two things. One is this concept of time. they don't know what is the difference between 5 minutes and say 15 minutes or 1 hour. So you have to be very specific with them. So they don't understand how that might be. So it's for some of them, then they take a lot of time to process information. So if there's multiple conversations happening together, they may be much slower at following, and they're very sensitive to overstimulation because the brain is unable to prioritize which stimuli to take. So they may be reading and suddenly there's movement and they'll get distracted and they won't be able to come back to their task and things like that. And then finally, there are difficulties in planning and time management, right? Give me this document next week. What does that mean? Next week equals 7 days. 7 days equals, X number of hours, of which X number of hours I need to prioritize and do it in stepwise. So those are things they need help with. Now, not everybody has these symptoms. These are ways that it manifests in different places. Some dyslexics are fantastic at time management because they use coping skills like organizing lists, time graphs, all of those. So it really depends. So can I ask for another volunteer for the next exercise to sort of talk about learning? Anybody willing to raise hands? I won't bully you this time, I promise.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have to read the color of the word and not the word itself. Okay. Let's go. Yeah, go ahead.
Purple, gray, red. Yellow, gray, black.
Go ahead. I can't hear you. Roy?
Suja, you've been unmuted. Go ahead and talk.
Sure.
You can unmute and talk. Suja Warrior. Okay, I'm unmuting Bhagyashree Patel.
Go ahead, Bhagyashree.
Hi, everyone. Yeah,
Hi.
so I'll start it again from the beginning. It's purple, gray, red, yellow, gray, black, gray, red, brown. It's difficult.
It is, Hannah. Go ahead.
And I think that's it, no?
There's the last line, black.
Black, yellow, purple.
Okay, now can I ask you to reverse this and actually read the word and not the color?
You mean spell out green, yellow?
Yeah, just the word, just spell it out. What?
Green, yellow, blue, black, orange, red, red, orange, purple, blue, green, yellow.
See how much easier that was,
Yeah.
Bhagyashree?
Yeah.
And this is because the way we train it, right? This is directly what working memory is about.
Correct.
Because we are all used to reading words and we've been trained to turn a blind eye to the, what color or font it is in. It doesn't matter. This is the struggle of an individual with a learning disability, that their brain is processing information which is different from the stimuli that's given. And imagine that being for every task that you do, every piece of information that you have to process. So that's really what it is. So then how do they manage? How do they cope, right? So they're very, very resilient. And with the right support, they find ways to cope and succeed. And in our next panel, we'll actually see some of that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip on that video. So yet, with all these struggles, dyslexic thinking really drives us forward. It powers our daily life. These are all inventions: the light, the phone, the car, the plane, Apple, HP, pediatric cardiology, and I can name many, many more. The Intel reader, they're all inventions of a dyslexic mind. It powers our imagination, Leonardo da Vinci to Veer Das, and everybody in between. These are all individuals who are dyslexic, and you'll see some famous authors there as well. And then it generates employment. 40% of the world's self-made millionaires are dyslexic. And these are some of the companies that were founded by dyslexic. And they drive innovation and productivity. So this is not just an D&I agenda, but we are now seeing more and more companies who are committed to this, seeing productivity gains. SAP had a 40 million saving with a client as soon as they had a neurodiverse individual join that team and problem solve for a challenge which the team was struggling with for over 6 months. JP Morgan talks about employability and errors and productivity 90 to 140% more than their employees, their other employees or neurotypical employees. And EY actually saved 3.5 million hours and over $300 million for the company through innovative business process optimizing solutions. And during the pandemic, when they had to do this exercise, their their neurodiverse team actually created a product that nobody thought was possible, and that resulted in a new product that they're now selling and earning for. So forget the internal benefits, but now it's a new business chain. So really, this is a bit contradictory, right? How does a mind that can't really process information make such an impact? Like, what's going on here? So Sir Richard Branson, who's the founder of Virgin, is a dyslexic, one of the most vocal people to speak for dyslexia, says that it just couldn't be there if it wasn't for his dyslexia. Dyslexic people have many of these great skills like imagination, creativity, and problem solving, which really are these things. They're very good at big picture thinking. They often miss out the details of a forest, but can see the whole forest. They're very, very innovative, out-the-box thinkers. They're great at visualizing. So instead of giving a text, if they have a mind map, you'll see the magic that they create. They're very strong communicators. This also emerges from the fact that they are, often it's a pain point, so they have taken it as a way to cope. They are logical and very strong reasoning, which also works with connecting the dots. These are those crazy guys that will say, oh, we can do this, ye hoga, wo hoga, and you're like, kya bakwas kar rahe ho, it's not possible. And problem solving. They really are very, very good at that. So the top universities across the world are looking at them and inviting them to theirs. In fact, it's so common. I think the stat is about 60% of students at MIT are dyslexic. So it's known as an MIT disease. Now, here I want you to note that, see, when they're younger, this translates into poor academics, which leads to judgment. But this does not mean they are not intelligent. They can actually perform very well in very rigorous, high-pressure environments as well. IIM Bangalore actually had, the individuals with dyslexia who are studying in their MBA programs were all hired out. Some of them even hired as placements during their internships. So they're really, really high performers. So let me ask you this. When you're hiring a candidate, what is it that you're looking for to be in your team? Let's put them on chat really quickly. This is just a test to see that y'all have not fallen asleep or gone on to another task. Go ahead. Competency, communication, self-motivation, skills, creative, experience, out-of-the-box thinking, attitude, quick learner, commitment. And it's so interesting that none of this actually has anything to do with how much they know about the topic. Attitude, emotional intelligence, these are the key strengths that we look at, right? And interestingly enough, EY has done a study where they map the skills of the future as identified by the World Economic Forum with the dyslexic strengths, which really indicates to us that when you hire an individual with a learning disability or dyslexia, you future-proof your business, right? Because these are at the core, their strengths are at the core of what you all need. And all of us as an organization need to succeed. And as organizations sort of further digitize and automate across sectors, this dyslexic thinking will be in greater demand. So really now think of the advantage you have, right? You have a pool of 1 in 5 that's untapped. GCHQ is the Digital Intelligence Agency for the United Kingdom, 60% of their online spies are dyslexic. They are actually mission critical for them. The chief accessibility officer of Microsoft says that they bring invaluable expertise and strengths to every organization. HSBC, has identified that their empathy, creative thinking, innovative problem solving skills really are at the core of the things that the organization needs to succeed. And most recently, LinkedIn actually added dyslexic thinking as one of the strengths you could add to your profile. So really the conversation is that this is proven. Why are we not acknowledging and doing more about it? So what can we learn from global leaders, right? EY has set up neurodiversity excellence centers across the country. They have, their first was in Philadelphia. Now they have centers in the US, Canada, and India. They really work towards their hiring practices. One of the things they do is they ask for self-declaration, and they have modified their recruitment strategy so that the individuals with neurodiversity don't get screened out of their process. They also are building a culture of inclusion, which is at the core of it, right? Helping both the employee as well as managers manage it. See, this is very, very important because I can go ahead and say how much ever I want about getting these people in the workforce, but it can be challenging and taxing for a manager who's not ready for it. I'm a parent of a teenager and I deal with it every day. And I think Nidhi will also probably associate with it. So sometimes it can really be annoying. And we need to be careful of both the mental health of both individuals. So this building of culture, negotiating interpersonal work skills is very, very important. And finally, EY has a unique perspective where they're actually helping build out the ecosystem. So lots of support that they provide, toolkits, advisory services. And here we have talks about
we've hired individuals that were driving an Uber or an Ola, delivering pizzas, working as a cleaner or a janitor. All of these jobs are honorable, hardworking jobs with dignity. Except if the focus of the individual and capability, for example, the individual who was delivering pizzas, 3 weeks after starting at EY, he was writing artificial intelligence machine learning algorithms for EY's artificial intelligence lab. If you think about the disparity of that individual who had applied to more than 500 different positions, has a data science background, and could not get a second interview because of the corporate structure of how interviews are being done, he did not perform well in interviews. But if you gave him a performance-based test and allowed his creativity to come out, you often found that thinking differently is a key strength. And I would say, last but not least, that individual and the 250 team members, combined with the thousands of neurodivergent employees at the EY that we already have at senior levels, all the way down to the most junior levels, our team of 250 today has driven over $650 million of savings, both in top line revenue for EY. We have created process optimization and saved 2.6 million man hours for our clients and for EY. And so, Vineet, what's amazing is our team members are bringing their strengths out, and that strength is changing their lives and allowing them to be self-sufficient, happy, successful, and productive.
So that's EY. Then there's HP that has a hiring culture. HP is one of the companies that was co-founded by a dyslexic. There was, they have a hiring program, and they train interviewers, and they have a culture in which their buddy program is actually very, very critical to the success of individuals. And of course, they hold sessions of awareness. So what can you really do, right? And we look at a four-prong approach that we suggest. One is the new hires, is where everybody really focuses on. They're the untapped resource pool. You do the talent acquisition, you modify your recruitment processes, and then you integrate them and retain them within the organization. The integration into the workforce is very, very, very critical. I can't say that enough. It doesn't make sense if it's just a checklist and these people are sitting outside your team twiddling their thumbs. The other big box is the undiagnosed employees. These are adults who may have had these experiences as a child, have figured out that some way to succeed, have gotten into the workforce, but they're probably underemployed, right? They're really struggling. They're really not working up to their. So how do you help them? Can you see, as a manager, can you help identify them? Can you do some adult screening, get them the support that they need? Diagnosis of, then there's diagnosed employees who actually declare that they are, and they ask you for the accommodations and professional development support. And then the largest chunk is your caregivers. They are the individuals who are often stressed, especially women in the workforce, right? Moms who have to manage their child's skill requirement and their school academic requirements. So for example, I as a mom have to often go as a scribe for my child who has dysgraphia and is not able to write. If that's the case, then I have to take off from work. How often will a manager allow that to happen, right? Or I may have to be home to teach my child because she cannot learn independently. This is a large, large burden, and often most women actually drop out of the workforce to become special educators and the primary educator for their child. And this is a group that we must look at. Also, cost of therapy is very high. In cities like Delhi, it can be up to $2,000 an hour. And a child needs it 4 times a week, at least. So there are very high costs associated with it. And when you look at sort of the emerging best practices in hiring, it's about how you relook job profiles. And I'm sure our panelists will look at, talk about it some more. Internship opportunities, on-campus recruitment, these are all great ways of hiring. I touched upon the culture of inclusion a little bit. Flexible work environments are very, very critical, where you allow them, because of the stimulation, to be able to work from home if required. Also giving them space to actually de-stimulate themselves. You may be in the middle of a meeting, the person says, this has become too much, I need to get out. Will you allow it? Can you create rooms, like we have smoking rooms often? Can you create de-stimulation rooms within your office spaces or somewhere which, a person can go and be silent? Provide technology, and our tech panel will talk about it a little bit more. And then finally, it's the professional development bit, right? The mentorship, everybody needs it, but these individuals need it just a little bit more because they don't get it often. So where do we start? You sensitize the decision makers, leadership teams, employees on the dyslexia at work opportunities. Create an inclusion strategy. This cannot be just part of your D&I strategy, but it really needs to be part of your growth and innovation strategy as well. Consciously build this culture of inclusion. This I cannot stress upon enough. As an advocate, as a parent, I really, really would not care otherwise, but I'm telling you, if every employee in an organization is important, and you need to learn how to communicate with these individuals, build organizational capacity, and then of course we are constantly learning. So I ask once more, and I think we had the answer. Any one of these could be dyslexic. It's not visible. So my urge is, don't miss out on the genius of the next Walt Disney, Tom Figure, Henry Ford, Richard Branson, Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs. You never know. So those are my contacts. With that, I will stop and really quickly take some questions in the chat. I see there are lots of questions around children who may have these issues. So I would say, talk to your school. Try and get screening done within the school. Counselors are available, a district hospital or your local hospital, psychiatric department or psychology department, neuro department for pediatrics will run these tests for you. So it's important to look at them as well. Um, but remember that mirroring happens till about age 8. If it doesn't, if it continues beyond that age group is when you want to start looking at being a little bit nervous. Also, these individuals, it's not just mirroring, they show other signs. So remember the 3 things I spoke about. You have to look at the academics, you look at the emotional and the working memory. And it has to be across all languages. So that's how you know that there's a challenge. Finally, there could also be other spelling issues, right? They spell phonetically, like enough is ENUFF instead of ENOUGH. I hope I spelled it right. But things like that. There's a question about autism. Kid by default dyslexic, not necessarily. It's one of the co-occurrences that can happen. So I'm sorry, we are over time. So please, I will take more questions towards the end. Thank you for listening, and back to you, Roy.
Thank you so much, Nupur. I think that was pretty intense, and I hope the participants were able to get a fair idea of how dyslexia works and the benefits of having dyslexic thinking. So, without further ado, I'll move on to the next talk on the panel. Okay, this is an experience sharing session, and we have some really amazing neurodiverse specialists here. So just to introduce a quick introduction about John Jacob Cherian, who would like to be called JJ, is a demand strategist for Asia at IBM. He comes with over 20 years of experience as a marketing communication specialist, working in demand generation for some top business in the world. He is also an alumnus of the MIT Sloan EPGDM, who is passionate about inclusion and neurodiversity in the workplace. Thanks for being with us today, JJ. We have Kunal Junjunwala, who is the managing director and principal founder of Airplay Payment Services. At the age of 10, Kunal, a serial entrepreneur, received a dyslexia diagnosis. Despite having difficulties, academic difficulties, he founded his first startup in the computer industry at the age of 14 and sold it for a profit. He holds a Triumph Global Executive MBA and is a Rochester Institute of Technology graduate. Thanks for being with us today, Kunal. We also have Shilpa, who is the head of AI development at TCS. Shilpa is a serial entrepreneur and intrapreneur in charge of AI-powered strategic intelligence and optimization platform, Optumera. She is passionate about merging art and science to improve how people make decisions and make the world a better place for everybody. Thank you for being with us, Shilpa. And this experience session will be moderated by Aparajita Singh, who is the lead for higher education at Changing Foundation. Aparajita is a former designer student who is now a social impact specialist. She has a wealth of experience in social economic development, designing and implementing sustainable processes and systems that signify and improve society as a whole and empower future generations. She has worked and assessed on initiatives in a variety of fields, including retail design, public welfare, and education. So with that, I welcome you all, and over to Aparajita to take it away from here. Aparajita,
You're on mute.
Okay, great. We can hear you. I'm sorry, Aparajita, we have a slight problem hearing you. Okay, we're still not able to hear you. Would you want to quickly drop off and join back in?
Is it clear?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So a very warm welcome to all our panelists, and thank you so much for being here and to share your journeys. So we'll quickly delve into our subject, and we are very keen to understand that how all of you took your path towards tech when it comes to your career, and how has your dyslexia given you the edge to succeed. So we'll quickly start with Shilpa, then we'll move to Kunal and then JJ. So Shilpa, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, and really honored to be here. So as a child, I was not diagnosed as dyslexic, because when I was growing up, it was not something which was where society was aware, even my teachers were aware about it. But I knew that the things were very different for me, right from reading out loud. My legs used to like really tremble when teacher asked me to kind of read out something loud. And I used to as a coping mechanism, I used to kind of really memorize a lot of those things, so that when the teacher asked, like one kid stopped and the other kid started speaking, I used to speak it out from the memory. Similar things like B's and D's and all of that was a struggle, and I still can't figure out left and right, and I have my nails painted for that to kind of figure out left and right. And math again was a big challenge growing up, and one of my coping mechanism for dealing with math was art. So in fact, my math book was more colorful than my art book. And while kind of making the career choices, art was a natural choice, because it was like a safe place for me, where I was to always kind of rely on art to be myself. But when I was giving the entrance exam for art school, I was actually kind of a little bored. And at that point in time, I always thought that I was inventing things for me, because the way the things were, it was not something which was not everything worked for me. So I had to kind of find out my own little ways of working things out, like it's coloring these nails or painting my math book, or memorizing certain things. And I thought that the science would be the best way to explore that experimentation further. And the only reason why I chose the college which I chose, which was because it was like near to my house. So I had this entire system which was set up, because I had to work a little harder to kind of memorize things up front before all my lectures or my classes. And I couldn't do that if I had to travel or commute for long distances. And that's how I got into an engineering career.
Just adding to that, Shilpa, could you tell one of your dyslexic powers that helps you like just succeed?
Absolutely. I think it's resilience. So when I was growing up, right from then, and when I was experimenting, not every experiment succeeded. So there were many things which worked and many things which did not work. And always trying out when things did not work out, always finding out newer ways of doing things really helped me to, become more resilient about it. And that kind of carried on to the workplace also. So when we started off with a concept, we had to actually hear like over 100 no's before we actually break through one of the largest clients for us. So it is a journey, and I feel that just being resilient and being okay with failure and finding out a way through it became a biggest strength which I got through dyslexia and others. And also, I would say the way in which I could connect the dots. I think that's something which becomes a very good strength. Like give 3 random things and I could connect them all together or create a big picture out of it. That always helps me in many things, be it like putting a pitch together or telling a story, or just connecting the dots together to make things make sense.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you for highlighting resilience, never giving up, and creating the big picture as the two most basic superpowers that come with dyslexia. Moving to you, Kunal, it will be wonderful if you could let us know that how did you move towards the tech path when it comes to your career, and again highlight your superpower that helps you succeed.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. For quick context, I got diagnosed with dyslexia very early in my academic career, thanks to the school I was in. The way I got intrigued by technology was because my sister Nupur was a computer science student in school, right? I was not academically inclined while she was driven by academia. During my breaks, I would go see what she's doing, and she would be typing away or doing some sort of basic programming in class, right? I took advantage of that and started spending a lot more time in the computer lab, right? writing code that came naturally to me. And it fascinated that I could, rather it was really fascinating to see that what you've typed on your computer on a screen is actually coming alive, because at that point of time, we did GW basic, etc. That would, you write you would write some sort of a loop, and it would creatively build that loop on the, would design something on the screen. So, just those kinds of things drove me to technology. Similar experience like Shilpa, I think the superpower really comes from the fact that, one, we can connect dots that other people struggle to connect or take a little longer to connect. They eventually get there, but we're a lot quicker in processing. But don't ever ask us to explain how we process it, right? We just know what the answer is, and it's very difficult for us to explain it. So one of the things that I struggled with was, in school I was called the cheater, per se, because every time the teacher asked me to give an answer to a question, whether it was math, physics, whatever, I knew the answer, and then she would come around, or he would come around and see whether I'd done the working, and the answer would be no. I haven't done it, and I would get yelled at, and then my classmate sitting next to me would get yelled at, saying you cheated, and the individual would go, no, I got the wrong answer. So we're very good at processing data, and now we expect computers to do this from an artificial intelligence point of view, is connect sort of unconnected dots. I would say that is our superpower. With everything said, I don't think dyslexia is something you identify with, as sitting across the table. And this is a conversation I was having 5 minutes ago, and I'm just going to digress for a minute. Is somebody told me a few minutes ago that dyslexia is now becoming your path to getting a college admission, right? Because it's so easy and you can't identify it. And I was like, no, if you are smart enough, you will pick up that there is something off about the person sitting in front of you. You can't put your finger on what that is. It could be the way they say things. It could be the way they interpret things. But there is a little bit of tinge that comes, a little bit of difference in their thinking. And that's how you identify a dyslexic. Obviously, there is formal, identification tools. But I'm just saying that's how you would sort of walk through that journey.
Thank you, Kunal, for sharing that. And as a neurodivergent, I think it's very relatable when you're in school and you're called cheater often, because you just quickly reach to the solution, and breaking down it into steps is just like a visual thing that is very difficult to communicate. So very relatable. Moving on to JJ, again, the same question. I would want you to highlight how did you move towards a career in tech, and talk more about your superpower as a dyslexic.
Yeah, so my movement into technology was very circumstance or happenstance. I was in the creative field, and eventually went on to become a writer. But a writer who can't spell is obviously not exactly very easy. I was great with ideas, and then unfortunately, the Twin Tower or the 9/11. Explosion happened, and a lot of the creative work that I was doing, the funding got pulled away. But luckily, one of my clients saw the kind of thought process that I had, and then I got pulled in. I still laugh and say this, that the only technology I know is to switch on my computer and switch it off. But I've been selling and marketing this for the last 20 plus years. Just like Shilpa and Kunal, resiliency and patterns. I love doing crosswords, and I love looking at raw data. And then earlier I would like, why on earth can't others see that pattern? Right now, I just like, hey, when you see it, you will see it. But, this is what I'm seeing. But, going back, my mom was a teacher. She used to teach medical students, and then she took on her MA when we came back to the country. And coincidentally, my wife is a special ed teacher. But growing up was very different. I lived in a different part of the world where things like dyslexia just meant, duffer and, stuff like that. I'm used to it. I am, like water off the back of a duck. I just don't care what people think of me because my work speaks for me. The number of times I've sent a letter saying forum JJ instead of from JJ, I would have made billions of dollars for that mistake. But I can see Kunal and Shilpa laughing, and I bet there are others who also have similar things. But boo to the world that complains about it, and yay to people like us who've been resilient, who found ways to make things happen. And like the team was saying earlier, Deepika was saying, like IBM was started by somebody who's neurodiverse, and the fact that they encourage and celebrate it. So that is it, circumstance. And I say this, my boss says this, is that the reason why I'm succeeding in the technology business is because of my different yet honest thinking. I call it black is black, white is white. Still hard for me to identify the 183 shades of gray. Back to you, Aparajita.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you for highlighting that how visualization comes as a power. And for audience to know that we have a handful of writers that we've been reading as children who are dyslexic. We Roald Dahl, Agatha Christie. So do go back and Google and be surprised to know that people who could not spell had written most of the stories that we went back to as children. My another question is that, like how JJ highlighted it as well, there's certain terms that are associated with people who have learning disability. We always look at them even as adults that, they're very limited when it comes to their work, their strengths, their success. And, we shy away from having them on board because we have this somewhere in the back of our head that, okay, they can't succeed beyond a point. But your journey, you being here is just path breaking. Okay, you've broken down the misconception of how people are very limited when it comes to the learning disabilities. That is something we are here to celebrate, and would also want you to tell people what have been those strategies that you abide by to succeed at your workplace, like your mantra to succeed on daily basis to evolve to progress, starting with you, Shilpa.
Sure. So
Shilpa, you're not audible. Okay, in the meanwhile, can we move to Kunal while we have Shilpa back with us?
Sure. So the way my academic or my professional career has evolved is I started interning very early in my life, right? Even though I started interning, I've never given an interview, right? I've held multiple positions. They all have been incidental in the sense I landed up meeting somebody and they said, look, it sounds like you know what you're doing. If you're interested, why don't you come join us, right? And one example of this is when I was in college for my undergrad, there were a lot of job interviews that I would go for and, per se or apply for, and I would get dismissed because I never had the grades to apply for those jobs, right? That filtering mechanism would automatically eliminate me in the potential job interview. However, I landed up speaking with somebody informally over coffee, and they offered me a position for a 6-month internship. I showed up there. They had this whole plan drawn out saying, look, you're here for 6 months. And I joined them in the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure division. They said, you have 3 months, figure out all the networking equipment deployed across all our offices, which is 780 odd offices in the country, in the US. And you have 3 months to figure this out, right? I said, okay. And I walked away, scratched my head for a little while, sat down, wrote a little bit of code, spent about a day doing that. And 2 days later, I gave my boss the report. I said, this is the machines that you have. This is their configuration, etc., etc. He turned and looked at me how the hell did you manage that, right? Because he thought that was a 3-month sort of job role that as an intern he would give me. And I told him, look, I just wrote a simple script because I know how to program, and I ran through it. He turned and said, look, we hired you to do this. Now I'm going to have to figure out what to do with you for the rest of the time. And that's how I converted my internship into a full-time job, right? I was fortunate enough to have somebody who was willing to look past my grades, was hiring me for the true reasons that you hire somebody, is they're capable of doing the job, not that their paper says they're capable, right? And I think that's what mattered, and that's what's driven my my professional career ever since. Even at AirPay, I think the resume comes at the end, or the grades that your performance has been in school or wherever comes later. It's what you've done so far and what you represent that we focus on. And I've realized that that's where I've excelled, right? I have been very, very fortunate that every place, whether it was my stint in the US, whether it was working for Hungama in India, every job allowed me to explore or exploit that, right? And my bosses embraced it. Some were extremely threatened by it because they were like, look, you're smarter than you look, and you're going to cut us out eventually, because I would, as my reporting would change. It's just part of the journey. And I think the key is to keep finding ways of either replacing yourself or replacing your boss. One of those two things as you grow, as you move forward.
Thank you, Kunal, for sharing that. Again, like the operating systems of the neurodivergents are just running a little bit too fast to arrive at the solution. And the quicker we embrace it, the much more we can get as a profit out of it when it comes to organizations. So thank you for highlighting that. Again, moving to you, JJ, sharing what helps you succeed or progress on day-to-day basis. What are your strategies at workplaces?
So, when Kunal talked about how he got back 2 days later, I was laughing because I related to that so well. I tell this to a lot of people who work with me, who I work for, who I interact with. Work the smart way, not the hard way. There is so many people who say this is how it's been done for the last 20 years, so continue doing it that way. But, I think God, or whichever superpower that you believe in, encourages you to think differently, to try and do it better. I think convenience is something that has driven so much innovation. And people who are neurodiverse, those with ADHD and dyslexia, if you see some of the top 10 reasons of why to hire them is because they innovate. They are looking for the smartest way to work with what you have, rather than complain about what you don't have and not deliver. So smart way versus the hard way. I hope that, addresses and encourages people listening in. Back to you, Aparajita.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that how conformity does not go down well with neurodivergence, and they're always at a lookout of creating something new, innovating something. We have Shilpa back. So requesting Shilpa to share what helps us progress at workplace. What are the strategies for you, Shilpa?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. So I was just talking about the paradox that, one in which I'm very forgetful, and the other part where I have like a very good photographic memory. And what helped as a strategy was to kind of write things down. So many times I found it very difficult when people spoke to kind of completely understand what was being said, and writing it down, like everything which was said, became one of my coping mechanism. And that in my initial days in my career really helped it, because I was kind of documenting everything which I was hearing, and it helped me to assimilate it. And because I could join the dots, then I was able to kind of replay that back with a different understanding which people did not have at that point in time. And in my initial career days, then that helped in me getting a lot of consulting projects with many seniors, because this was like a pathway that she could actually understand what was being said and actually make sense out of it. So that became a very important coping strategy and a pathway to kind of, leverage the dyslexic strength through it. Another thing which I feel which is a important thing to kind of understand is to know your strengths. So if creative work and visualizing and a lot of these joining these dots are your key strengths, then there are certain other things which you need coping with, right? Like for example, with to kind of taking help for proofreading or taking help on things which require a lot of process. So I'm not a very process person where you have to kind of have this list of things where you have to do like 1 2 3 in the same order and repeat that every time. I find a lot of those things very difficult to do in my day-to-day activities, and that's where I feel that taking help from your team and taking help of others become very useful for you to kind of succeed. And finally, it's the team which succeed, right? So it is about leveraging each other's strengths.
Thank you, Shilpa. Due to time constraints, we'll move to the next panel session. But thank you so much, all of you, for coming here, sharing your personal journeys, and giving us the perspective of how people who are neurodivergent succeed more than others at workplaces, and sharing your superpowers. Thank you so much. Over to you, Roy.
Thank you so much, Aparajita, JJ, Kunal, Shilpa. Thank you so much for being with us today. We will be moving into the next discussion, which is on the assistive technology. So I think we left within about another 20 minutes or so. So we'll try to close this as soon as possible. So I'm quickly getting into the introduction of our next set of speakers. So we have Manu Kohli, who is the founder and CTO of Cognable. Manu is nearly 18-year-old veteran, IT veteran with 7 years of expertise in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital health. He has created diagnostics and prospective tools for neurodevelopmental disorders like autism that are based on machine learning and have been recognized by NASSCOM, the Ministry of Electronics, and UNICEF. He has written several books with SAP Press and about 12 articles for the conferences and peer-reviewed journals. So thank you for being with us today, Manu. We have Balindu Sharma, who is the Director of Local Languages and Accessibility at Microsoft India. Balindu, is the Director of Microsoft's India's Global Commercial Accessibility Program and a key contributor to the organization's employee resource groups for the people with disabilities. He's a recipient of the President of India Award and the Global Ability Award 2022 for community service from Microsoft. In addition to leading projects to increase societal awareness and competency in accessibility, Balindu actively contributes to the creation of accessibility technology. His particular interests include accessibility in local languages, inclusive education, and accessible marketing. Thank you for being with us today, Balindu, and welcome to the panel. And we also have Deepika Ghosh, who leads the employment entrepreneurship at Change Inc. She's an accomplished researcher and practitioner in the field of behavior science, and the areas of public health and education have been the emphasis of her work. She was a founding member of the Behavioral Insights Unit of India at Niti Aayog before joining Change Inc. Thanks for being with us, Deepika. And this conversation will be moderated by Joel Godi, who is the founder and CEO of NeuroGifted. So NeuroGifted, is an organization or initiative devoted to promoting neurodiversity in organizations, raising awareness of neurodiversity, and offering assistance and long-term solutions to all stakeholders. So without further ado, over to you, Joel, to take it away from here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roy. I am audible and visible to everyone here. So we have a very interesting set of speakers today, Balindu and Manu, who are going to represent their work. So given that we have a very limited time left, let's straight away go to Balindu with this. So Balindu, Microsoft being one of the first technology giants to commit to accessibility and having the most diverse inbuilt offerings of functionalities. right? So as an industry veteran with extensive experience in the domain of accessibility, how can organizations leverage technology to further their inclusion goals?
Balinder, sorry, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry for that. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be with all of you here in this program. And thank you so much for that question also. So as far as Microsoft is concerned, the first thing that we realize is that disability of any kind, it could be dyslexia, it could be any other, diversity, related, person's limitations, etc. They do not mean that the person is incapable or unsuccessful. So that is one thing. So that realization is there at the Microsoft. Number two, we believe that, these kind of issues, they are actually a strength. And they enrich the organization with unique skills. Like these people, whoever comes to the organization, they will bring with them some unique skills, some unique experiences, which are not otherwise available. So we also believe that, bringing this kind of talent in the organization that inspires others also, other employees as well as also creates an inclusive culture. So that is the realization at Microsoft. So that is one thing. Secondly, we are taking, our work in accessibility, as much, we are giving it as much importance as we do to some business. We have got an accessibility maturity model in place at Microsoft. So that means that we have a proper structured plan, a proper structured program under which we, follow the inclusion charter. And this program actually has different pillars. For example, there are different 5 pillars here. One is that how we respond to initial, requirements of people with different kind of, disorders or disabilities, etc. That is number one. Number two is then how can we create repeatable experiences? Like whenever we are successful in dealing with these kind of, issues, then how can we make it repeatable? Then there are defined situations that we deal with. Then how these are managed, and finally, how do we optimize, the entire experience? Now, having said that, what I mean to say is that, there are different pillars. First is that we talk about people and culture. We have to make sure that our culture is such that, different kind of disorders are welcome here. Because as I mentioned earlier, that this disabilities or disorders, they are part of the diversity that our society has. So these are welcome. So that is one thing. Number two, we have accessibility strategy. So we take it very seriously, and that reflects in so many things. For example, we have, chief accessibility officer at Microsoft, a person who deals with or who guides us or who leads our inclusion journey. So there is a proper, a top level position of chief accessibility officer. Secondly, and the person who is Jenny LeFleury, she also comes from disability space. She has hearing disability. Also, there are so many people in Microsoft who have dyslexia. For example, Donna Sarkar, who is leading accessibility in development space. She's dyslexic, and she has declared it. And many people at Microsoft have declared their own, disorders or disability or limitations, because we don't feel that, there is something you feel, bad about your limitations or any of that kind. So people do come forward and they declare their disabilities. And that is possible because we have created an atmosphere where disabilities and disorders, they are valued. They are valued as inclusion, part of inclusion, as diversity. They are valued as part of our culture. And as far as different pillars of our work in inclusion is concerned, we divide that in 4 different areas. And these 4 different areas are: number 1, culture; number 2, systems, like how to support people from end to end. Like when a person applies for a job in Microsoft, how can we support from that stage itself to when the person is inside Microsoft? So that a programmatic approach is there. And finally, there are products that we build, and they support people with different kind of disorders and disabilities. So a proper programmatic approach is there in dealing with disabilities or disorders or any limitations that all of us have. And as I mentioned that this is Why this is important for Microsoft? That is one very obvious question. And the answer is that we believe that this is our social responsibility. This is also, we are actually, adding to our values. And you must have heard that Microsoft values a lot, empathy. Like empathy is valued a lot at Microsoft. Similarly, it also adds to the brand trust. It also adds to, a feeling among the employees that everyone is welcome here. So those kind of things are there, and that's why we are committed to an atmosphere of inclusion.
Joel, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, so again, like I said, we're lack of time. Let's talk to our next panelist, Manu. See, Manu, one of the key challenges in this space is the identification and access to support services.
Yeah.
AI-driven solution to address this challenge. So can you tell us a little bit more about your approach and your work?
Yeah, sure. So we understand the need for the solution of early detection because the neuroplasticity of the brain is highest in the first 3 years, right? So you detect a child very early, and when you start the intervention post detection in the first 3 years, the probability or the chances of rehabilitation are highest because the brain can be accustomed to how you are teaching new skills and new areas in which the child has a deficit. So our work has been focused on AI-driven technologies for early detection that can be used by non-experts, which were developed and validated through large-scale clinical trials that happened with large government hospitals in India. So, we got a lot of success on that. We got a lot of expansion on our business, based on that in India, which probably grew almost more than 100% on a year-on-year basis. But one of the challenges what we see, does this innovation goes to the bottom of pyramid? I think it doesn't, because the technology adoption is coming up with a lot of behavioral changes that the stakeholders has to adopt before they start using it, right? An app to diagnose rather than a doctor, intervention driven by a therapist, uh, changing to a role of a parental driven intervention, AI program that keeps recommending the goals for the child versus a clinician who had 20 years of experience. These are all paradigm shifts, which have to accustom with the behavior change. So, the access is definitely there. The quality is really gone up as per the clinical trials, but its adoption has to be supported by the governmental institutions, or the state governments or central governments in early intervention centers, in government schools, private schools, etc., and has to be accommodated within a lot of investor support to scale this up very quickly. I think, Joel, you're on mute.
This is happening again and again. Sorry about that. So, Balendu, before we go and talk to another panelist, Deepika also is here. Can we also just stress on, what about the investment? How important is it for small and mid-sized organizations to invest in such technologies? The probable barrier being the cost. So how would you explain that?
Yeah, so I agree with you that, whenever we support accessibility, generally, there is a cost attached to it. And that is also an irony because, the sections of society that needs the most support, actually, they deal with the cost issues. Like technology has to be easily available, but generally technology for people with different kind of disorders, that is very costly. It should be the other way around. So that is one fact of the society. And when we combine this barrier with other barriers in society, for example, if the person who is a person with the disorder, it also comes from a background in local languages, the person will not have a good access to technology. Similarly, people who come from financially underprivileged background, they will face a lot of problems here. Again, if there is a woman and the woman is from rural background, you can imagine that, the kind of challenges they face, and they will not have access to technology. So these kind of challenges are real for our society, and we all have to, come together to, bring solutions to these issues. Now, this is very important to invest in these technologies. If I talk from an organization's perspective, I would say that whenever we invest in accessible technologies, actually we are addressing a particular disorder, but it is useful to everyone. Like from Microsoft's perspective, I can share that, so many features that we have added to Microsoft's products, and we thought that this particular feature will be useful to a person with visual disability, for example, but that feature is useful to all. Dictation is one such feature. Themes is one such feature using which you can, change the color of your screen, but that is useful to so many people. These are useful to, old people. So many people take advantage of this. And we say that when you work for accessibility and support for some people, actually you ensure usability for all. So the organization should understand that the investments you are making, they are not just limited to certain people, or they are not just going to benefit certain people only, but they are going to be leveraged by most of the people. I'll give you one example. If you use Microsoft Teams, there is one feature called blur, and even that is available in now in Zoom also, and many other programs. But there is a story behind how this came into being. So we have a developer in Redmond in the US, and the developer named Sweta. She's from Tamil Nadu, and she used to chat with her parents. And the developer is a person with hearing disability. She's a deaf person. So whenever she was working with she was chatting with her parents in India, she was not able to properly lip read them because there was something happening in the background. Somebody coming, something happening, something dropping or something like that. So she requested that there must be a feature to blur the background. And then blur came into being, and we all know that we are using the blur feature. Almost every single person is using that. So when we work for to support a particular segment, we actually make accessible technology. So
thank you so much.
Must be there.
Yeah. So technology obviously is doing wonders for the neurodivergent community. So at this point, I'd like to just bring in Deepika to bring in her 2 bits about what she's heard, and if she would like to ask the panelists any questions.
Our work are changing, you will know that we're very passionate for meaningful inclusion of neurodiversity. Right?
Could you be a little louder, Deepika? We're struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's just very soft. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll just, I hope this will help. So you'll know that we are very passionate about meaningful inclusion, right? And from cradle to career, what that entails is that throughout one's journey, through school, through higher ed, vocational education, skilling, all the way through to employment and entrepreneurship, technology plays a very vital role in enhancing the experience of the neurodiverse person. So while it may not, here's where it gets interesting, right? While it may not be explicitly assistive tech, it certainly plays a big part in making all the difference between struggling and thriving, right, for neurodiverse folks. And it has a very wide applicability for the organization at large, because even if your employees aren't neurodiverse, they can still improve their experience at the workplace greatly by using some of these technologies. So I'm going to echo what Balendu said right now. So looking at accessibility from a socio-economic standpoint, like he said, right, depending on where you are based, whether you're a woman, whether you're any other marginalized community, plus as well as whether you are varying degrees of ability and disability. More and more of these accessibility features are being integrated into mainstream platforms for free, or at no additional cost. And I personally find that as somebody who is autistic and has ADHD, something that he mentioned, right? That blurring feature, which has become a standard feature in Microsoft and Zoom and across all platforms. It really helps to minimize the extraneous visual stimulus and stay focused and in meetings. Something as simple as speech to text, the quality of speech to text has greatly improved in recent years, and it's become more and more intuitive. Something like that can really reduce cognitive overload during meetings, so it really allows you to focus on what's being said, and that something's taking down notes for you so you can go back to them later. And this is not just my experience as someone who's neurodiverse, it's everybody's experience, right? So I feel like we need to acknowledge as a community the very wide range of benefits that technology can bring, and invest accordingly, and also know that there are probably in the existing infrastructure that we have technology wise, there are plenty of features which are unexplored. So go ahead and check those out as well, and you never know, your quality of work may really be improved.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Manu, with your with the work that you're doing, and with seeing what Microsoft is doing, and also listening to what Deepika says as a neurodivergent user of technology, so where do you see this all going in the future? I mean, what can we expect in the future?
I think the technology is going to play a very significant role. I think it's going to be a game changer for not only for the individuals who are neurodivergent, but also for the families. It's the complete stakeholder group that is, really going to see a transformation. And I think a lot of stuff on the technology side and the resources that are available now, open source, are thriving, those changes. So one of the examples I would tell you is that of my own son who is on autism and struggles with a lot of communication and socialization abilities, but he goes himself on W3 schools, looks for the sets, codes in Python, and comes into the maths, apply the same thing he learned in Python over there on A union B, A intersection B, A minus B. Is all open source. This would have not been possible if this technology resources were not there. So I think what we really need to do is to make these resources a little bit more structured, oriented toward those population, have this inclusion in the schools, colleges, and also in the inclusive workspace as well. So for example, at Microsoft, when someone joins, the training curriculums can be as simple open source as possible, which can actually also make people ready. We are struggling right now on a problem of attrition, finding a right workforce, technical workforce who is able to join and stay there. So I think these are all solutions that we have to look towards: hiring, sustaining, training, involving the family, schools. Open schooling curriculums have to adapt, so to make people, individuals, ready towards employability and towards the culture.
Wonderful. And Bolendu, any parting shots? What can we expect from Microsoft in the future?
Yeah, so I actually agree with both of them, like Deepika as well as Manu. And I also believe that technology is going to play a very big role in empowering people with different kind of limitations that we have. And every one of us, like all of us, have some kind of the limitation. And people know that 70% of the disabilities or disorders, they are invisible. So you never know that somebody might be feeling that I am not affected in any way, but almost everyone is. And secondly, every single person during their lifetime, at least once they will be, they will face some kind of disability. You consider that, as a guarantee, like every old age will bring its own problems, and so many things are there. So but technology can definitely, play a very big role, and I'll give you some glimpses of it. Because that will, I believe that, a picture is, worth 1,000 words. This is what people say. But when we see demonstrations, I think they are worth 1,000 pictures. So let me show you as to how easy it is to use technology these days. Although technologies are very, very costly, but some of these are part of your day-to-day applications and softwares also, like Windows. Like Microsoft Office and some other applications that we use. So I'll just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to give you a glimpse of it. I'll share my screen, and I'll open some application. For example, this is Microsoft Word, right? And this document may not be very accessible to a person with dyslexia because the size of the characters, the font size might be very small, or maybe some other challenges they might be facing. But how can I solve it? So number one, I just select this and I choose a font called Open Dyslexia. Open Dyslexic, and I press enter, and you see this is a different kind of a font which has been designed for people with dyslexia, and it makes it easier for them to focus on the screen because every single character is heavy at the bottom, right? And so 0 will look different from O will look different from P, and so on and so forth. So that is one thing. Now in Word itself, if you go to view, and in view, if you click on immersive reader, see what happens. Now your entire screen gets transformed. There is a gap between lines, a lot of gap, in the left and right. And we all know that when your content is divided like this, it is displayed like this, we can focus it better. Okay, but that is not all. If I click on, for example, on the color part here, like if I go to page color, if I change the color here, I can maybe focus better on this. If I go to line focus and I click on maybe one line, I can focus even better, right? A single line is there and I'm able to focus. Even then, if I'm not able to understand, or even then, if I'm not able to read this text, there is assistance from technology in the form of read aloud. If I click here, see what happens. So if I click here and
in India, up to 5 to 15% of school-age children, almost 35 million, in our
it is reading that out to me. So these kind of technological innovations are part of the day-to-day technologies nowadays, and we can take advantage of this. Let me take you to OneNote, which is a free app from Microsoft. And imagine that a child is, in the class and the teacher is using OneNote. Now, this is a story and the children are reading this, but there is a particular child who is unable to read it properly. What they can do? They can just use OneNote and go to view, and here click on immersive reader and see what happens. This will transform the entire visual experience for the child. So it will appear like this now, and the child can now, focus better on this. And then there are 3 simple, sections here. This is for text, this is for grammar options, and this is for, some reading preferences. If I click on text, I get so many features here. And remember, this is a free product from Microsoft called OneNote. So just go to this part and increase the text size if I'm not able to read it properly. And this was a proper document text, but I have transformed it, right? If I want to increase the spacing, or if I want to decrease the spacing, there is a button. If I want to change the font, we all know that Comic Sans font is better for people with dyslexia, so I can choose that. Okay, and then I can change the background by going to this button. The background is changed. And also, if I go to this part, the second button, you will see so many options are available. Like, still, if I'm not able to read this, I can click on syllables, and now this text is divided into syllables. So now I can even pronounce this better because I know that Gemma has 2 parts to it. Gemma, only, right? Parents. So this has been divided for the children to read it better, pronounce it better. And I can also remove that. If I want to, for example, I'm learning English, and we all know that learning disabilities are part of, people with different kind of neurodiversities and children from this space. So I can just click on nouns to identify all the nouns, and the child will be better able to understand and read. If I want to identify verbs, just click here. So verbs are identified, then adjectives are identified. It's that easy in these tools. Okay, even if still I am facing some challenges, I can go to this part and click on picture dictionary, right? Now, see what happens. The child does not understand as to what minutes mean. Yeah, see, and it is explaining to the child that minutes means this. This is the concept of time. What is away? I click here and see, this is pictorially described that this is the concept of being away. This child is away from the home, right? Jungle, what is jungle? This is jungle. Okay, what is hut? This is hut. What are parents? What is the concept of parents? This is the concept of parents. Even then, if I'm not able to understand it, even then, if I find pronunciation related problems, I can click on this particular button here at the bottom.
Gemma was only 5 minutes away from her
And if I find challenges with the voice speed, I can reduce the speed like this.
parents' hut. But the jungle had already taken on a different
I
personality.
can even change the voice to male or female voice, etc., etc. And finally, let me give you one more example. Although there are so many things that we can do. For example, if we come to PowerPoint, we generally, what do? We just type the headlines and then the name of the person, and then like this second slide which has a headline, and then there are bullet points. This is how we actually work, right? So a child with dyslexia or autism or even low vision, they will feel challenges when they are working with visually things which are visual in nature, like PowerPoint presentations or graphics, etc. But here technology is there to help them. If the children are working on, for example, some project and they are not able to properly work on this, they just use Microsoft PowerPoint. Go to home, go to designer and see what happens. PowerPoint is helping them to create beautiful designs for their own presentation. Like if I choose this one, the design is made for me. If I go to the second page, again, designer is working for me in the background. I just need to click here, and automatically I'm able to create a very beautiful PowerPoint presentation. See, this is one page and this is the second page, right? And this is so easy. Just a few clicks are required. Finally, let me take you to internet, and that is very important because children learn a lot over the internet. And imagine like this is a website where a child goes and they are reading some content here. They just need to use Microsoft Edge, because Microsoft Edge is very friendly to people with dyslexia and people with other kind of limitations as well. How and why? Because I have opened this website here, but you will see a book icon here in the address bar. If I click here, see what happens. This gets transformed totally, because otherwise this page was like that. So many advertisements were there, so many colors were there, lots of stuff was there, and the person might not be able to properly focus on this. But just click here and see what happens. Entire this experience becomes very simple and very easy to your eyes. Even then, if you find difficulties, just click on text preferences, increase the text size like this. Now you can read it better. Still, if you find difficulty, go to reading preferences, click on line focus, single line you can focus, 3 lines you can focus on, multiple lines you can focus on. If you have language related issues, and I was talking about that earlier, like there are certain language related issues that people face. So like I'm a person who comes from Hindi background, I'm reading this. It is very easy now to go to reading preferences and click on this translate Hindi button and see what happens. This will get translated. चित्रों और तथ्यों के साथ जंगल जानवरों की सूची, अद्भुत जानवर जो दुनिया भर के जंगलों में रहते हैं. So accessibility technology is not limited to just English language or some languages only. Now it is getting even more inclusive, and these are some experiences that I wanted to share with you, and I think that gives a glimpse of what is happening around us in the world of technology.
Really, that was really remarkable, Balindu, and I'm sure a lot of us have benefited from knowing. Frankly, I don't know that all these things existed in Microsoft. So with that, we'd like to close, and thank you so much for everybody and for your patience. I know we've strayed a little bit over time. So over to you, Roy.
Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you, Balindu, Manu, and Deepika for this amazing talk on assistive technology, and Balindu especially for exposing us to what's available for free. What we can start using on a daily basis. And I know this is a longer conversation, but we've slightly gone over time also. We didn't want to cut you short, but this was really interesting. Thank you so much. And what you see here is our contact details. You can write to us at dni@nascomfoundation.org or reach changing@info@changing.org. I would also like to thank Saurabh, Meera, and Venu for interpreting this entire session in sign language. So this session also being recorded, so it will be available on our social media channels. So if you look at the chat, my team would have pinged the social media handles there. Please do follow us there. And this is a conversation that we do on a regular basis, the Diversity Inclusion Talk. So we will come back to you with another interesting topic, probably very soon, maybe next month. We hope to do it on a monthly basis. But yeah, if you do have any questions, I know there were a lot of questions in the chat and Q&A, maybe we couldn't pick all of those. So please do drop us an email and then we will try to get back to the panelists and get back to you all. So thank you so much for joining us today and have a good day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.